In the depths of ancient archives lie accounts of voyages so extraordinary that scholars dismiss them as pure fantasy. Yet recent discoveries suggest these tales of impossible islands, supernatural encounters, and otherworldly phenomena may have been documented reality, carefully disguised as fiction to protect those who dared to record the truth. Before diving deeper, don't forget to subscribe for weekly mysterious content. It was the winter of 1268, in the bustling port city of Basra, when a merchant named Ahmad ibn Fadlan returned from what would become his final voyage to the eastern seas. The customs records, discovered in a forgotten vault beneath the old harbor master's office, detailed cargo that defied explanation, stones that glowed without fire, water that never froze, and specimens of creatures no naturalist had ever catalogued. Ibn Fadlan's ship, the Qamar al-Bahr, had departed 6 months earlier with a crew of 42 men. Only 13 returned. The survivor testimonies preserved in the municipal archives speak of islands that appeared and vanished like mirages, of storms that raged beneath clear skies, and of encounters with beings that challenged the very nature of reality. The first anomaly occurred 3 weeks into the voyage, somewhere in the waters between Socotra and the Maldives. The ship's navigator, a man named Khalil al-Baghdadi, recorded compass readings that pointed in directions that should not exist. His log, written in precise Arabic script, describes magnetic forces that pulled the needle toward points above and below the horizon, as if the very fabric of space had been twisted into impossible geometries. On the morning of the 4th week, the crew sighted what appeared to be a mountainous island rising from waters that their charts indicated should be empty ocean. The island's shores were lined with structures that seemed to shift and change when observed directly, appearing as ruins from one angle and pristine buildings from another. The stone itself possessed an unsettling quality, described by the surviving crew members as simultaneously ancient and newly carved. The merchant Ibn Fadlan, according to his own account, led a small party ashore to investigate potential trading opportunities. What they discovered defied every principle of natural philosophy known to the medieval world. The island's inhabitants, if they could be called that, stood nearly 8 feet in height with elongated limbs that moved in ways that suggested joints in impossible places. Their faces, when glimpsed in peripheral vision, appeared human, but direct observation revealed features that no witness could adequately describe in their testimonies. These beings communicated through a form of speech that resonated not through the ears but seemed to emanate from within the listener's own mind. They spoke of time as a physical substance that could be manipulated, of distances that could be folded like fabric, and of waters that connected not just distant shores but entirely different realms of existence. The translator, a learned man named Yusuf al-Dimashqi, attempted to record their words but found that the symbols he wrote changed meaning when he looked away and returned to his notes. The island's central feature was a massive well, carved from a single piece of black stone that reflected no light despite the blazing sun overhead. The water within moved in patterns that defied the laws of nature, flowing upward in spirals and forming shapes that resembled geometric forms from no earthly mathematics. When one of the crew members, a young sailor named Hassan, attempted to drink from the well, witnesses reported that his reflection in the water showed not his own face but that of an elderly man with eyes that held knowledge of events that had not yet occurred. The beings offered to trade knowledge for what they called moments of significance from the crew's lives. The exact nature of this exchange remains unclear from the surviving testimonies, but several crew members agreed to the bargain. Those who participated returned to the ship fundamentally changed, speaking of visions that showed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of stars, and the death of gods. Their eyes, according to Ibn Fadlan's account, reflected depths that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. The merchant's log describes artifacts acquired during this exchange, a compass that pointed toward the observer's deepest desire rather than magnetic north, a map drawn on material that felt like silk but could not be cut or burned, and a small vial containing liquid that showed different colors to each person who observed it. These items were later examined by scholars in Baghdad, who declared them to be made from materials that did not exist in the known world. The second major incident occurred during the voyage's 7th week, when the ship encountered a region of ocean where the water itself seemed to possess consciousness. The surface moved in patterns that suggested intelligence, forming shapes that resembled written characters in languages that predated human civilization. The crew reported that the water sang, producing harmonies that induced visions of cities beneath the waves, populated by beings that swam through liquid air and breathed liquid fire. In these underwater metropolises, architecture defied physical laws. Buildings grew like coral but showed evidence of deliberate design, with chambers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The visions showed libraries where books wrote themselves, markets where memories were traded like commodities, and temples where worship consisted of mathematical equations that described the fundamental nature of reality. The ship's cook, a man named Omar al-Andalusi, claims to have been pulled overboard by invisible hands during this encounter. His testimony, given after his miraculous return to the surface 3 days later, describes a journey through underwater realms where time flowed backward and forward simultaneously. He spoke of meeting versions of himself from different periods of his life, all existing in the same space, engaged in conversations that spanned decades of subjective time but occurred in moments of real duration. The most disturbing aspect of Omar's account was his description of the underwater beings' warning. They spoke of a coming convergence, a time when the barriers between different realms of existence would weaken, allowing entities from dimensions beyond human comprehension to enter the physical world. The signs of this approaching event, they claimed, would include voyages like Ibn Fadlan's, where ordinary sailors would encounter the impossible and return with artifacts that should not exist. The third anomaly manifested during the 8th week, when the crew discovered an island that existed in multiple states simultaneously. From the ship's deck, observers could see 3 different versions of the same landmass, occupying the same coordinates. One appeared as a lush tropical paradise with golden beaches and crystal-clear waters. Another showed a volcanic wasteland with rivers of molten rock and skies filled with ash. The third version displayed ruins of such antiquity that the stone itself seemed to be dissolving back into the fundamental elements from which it had been formed. The crew members who went ashore reported that they could move between these different versions of the island by walking through specific geometric patterns carved into the bedrock. Each transition was accompanied by a sensation described as being turned inside out while remaining perfectly intact. The ruins version contained a library where books were carved directly into living stone, their pages growing and changing as new information was added by unknown hands. In this stone library, the expedition discovered records of previous voyages that matched their own experiences with unsettling accuracy. The texts, written in scripts that seemed to translate themselves as they were read, described encounters with the same impossible islands, the same otherworldly beings, and the same reality-defying phenomena. Most disturbing was the discovery that these records included detailed accounts of Ibn Fadlan's voyage, written in stone that showed clear evidence of having been carved centuries before his birth. The final documented incident occurred during the journey's 9th week, when the ship entered a region where the boundary between water and sky became indistinct. The crew reported sailing through clouds while simultaneously navigating ocean currents, with sea creatures swimming through the air and birds diving into the water as if the two elements had exchanged properties. The sun and moon appeared simultaneously in the sky, casting shadows that fell upward and created patterns of light that hurt to observe directly. In this realm of inverted physics, the crew encountered what Ibn Fadlan described as the shepherds of reality. These entities appeared as constantly shifting geometric forms that maintained human consciousness while existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They explained that the strange voyages were not random encounters but carefully orchestrated tests designed to identify individuals capable of serving as bridges between different planes of existence. The revelation that emerged from this encounter fundamentally altered the understanding of the crew's experiences. The islands, the beings, and the impossible phenomena were not separate anomalies, but components of a vast system designed to monitor and occasionally interact with human consciousness. The voyages served as recruitment missions, identifying individuals whose minds could process multi-dimensional reality without losing their essential humanity. The artifacts collected during the journey were revealed to be recording devices, storing impressions of the crew's experiences and transmitting them to repositories of knowledge that existed outside normal space-time. The merchant Ibn Fadlan and his surviving crew members had become unwitting participants in a cosmic experiment whose purpose remained beyond human comprehension. The most unsettling discovery came when the geometric entities showed the crew a vision of their own world as observed from higher dimensions. Human civilization appeared as a thin film of consciousness spreading across the surface of a sphere that existed within a vast ocean of other realities. The entities explained that stories like those of Sinbad, the sailor, served as encoded messages, preserving accounts of genuine encounters with trans-dimensional phenomena while disguising them as entertainment to prevent widespread panic. The customs records from Basra show that Ibn Fadlan's ship returned with cargo that was immediately confiscated by authorities and transferred to a secure facility. The crew members were debriefed by scholars who specialized in what the documents refer to as anomalous maritime phenomena. Each survivor was required to sign agreements prohibiting discussion of their experiences, with violations punishable by exile to the deep desert. What do you think really happened to the crew members who never returned from those impossible islands? Subscribe to uncover more cases where ancient tales may have been documenting encounters with realities beyond our understanding.